Oh, let me just adjust that. There we go. Okay. Well, I don't want to waste too much time. I want to just get right into it. It fucking sucks. We just lost somebody very important in the world of music and otherwise. David Bowie just passed a few days ago. So in order to celebrate the man's life, I'm going to take a critical look at the first major acting role that he embarked upon in 1976, a little movie called The Man Who Fell to Earth. This was so not worth it. It's ridiculous. Oh man. Now I know I already kind of did a review in this spot already with the movie Fun, and I know usually I wear something kind of like silly that has something to do with the movie, and I know among many other things Mr. Bowie is a fashion icon, but man, it's that goddamn cold. I'm just gonna wear this cloak and sit next to these radiators, one of which is not turned on. If you answered my ex-wife, that would be correct. Alright, let's get on with the review. Today's movie, in honor of the passing of a true cultural icon, Mr. David Bowie, I'm going to be doing the movie from 1976, directed by Nicholas Roeg, The Man Who Fell to Earth, which is a kind of sci-fi fantasy movie. This movie's practically a documentary because, as I understand it, Bowie was in fact an alien life form that came to Earth, had a little fun playing with our minds, and then just kind of left us recently and said, yep, time to go back to Zarklon 9 or whatever. But anyway, his character in this movie, comes to Earth. He's trying to find supplies, I think specifically water, which is a big commodity on his planet. And he comes with money and tries to, flip it so that he could have enough to bring back supplies to his home planet. However, things get a little more complicated when he sort of befriends and starts to fall in love with this hotel matron, and, these other businessmen come into the picture, one of which is played by a young Rip Torn, which I've barely seen young Rip Torn, although he still talks like and kind of looks like an old man. Didn't need to see his penis at one point also. Now the director, as I mentioned, Nicholas Roeg, is, he directed the movie Performance, which I reviewed a couple reviews back. That was the one with Mick Jagger and, the sort of crime drama kind of thing. And not only do Roeg's movies have in common the fact that it's, usually a rock star's first major prominent role in a movie, but there's also a certain aesthetic that's inherent in most of the movies of this period. You get like similar pacing, similar vibe, even just like unnerving shots of things happening in the sky. But this one makes a little bit more sense, not only because, as I mentioned, like who else is going to play an alien but Bowie, but also, if you didn't know this, he had some background in acting before he even got into the music thing. In fact, it was a mime company. So I found the character that he fell in love with thoroughly annoying, and didn't really seem to serve any purpose to the story other than, it feels like you should have a love interest, I guess. But even Bowie's character doesn't really display any affection for her, but it's also not like he has some ulterior motive for keeping her around either. It's just kind of like, why is this in here? The movie clocks in at 2.25 hours long about. And I was on board for the whole movie, but, towards like the last half hour or so, it's just kind of like, alright, what are we doing here? It started getting into that sort of like indulgent territory that I was expecting more out of the movie, honestly, so thank goodness there wasn't as much of that. But, transitioning over into the positive, I'll say at the other corner of my mouth that, the indulgent imagery and stuff is actually really fun to look at. I actually particularly like all this stuff with the aliens on the home planet that we get to see. It could very easily, a movie like this, of this type, and from this time period, could kind of fall into, looking very dated and just kind of like lame and whatever, but nah, man, I love this stuff with his former family and all that. So there's actually a lot of nice little details in the movie. I can't mention them all, but For instance, there's a moment where we have just seen Bowie's former alien family on the other planet, and they kind of walk in this certain way. And then just moments later, we see two people walking by the side of the road, like in the same position, walking in the same way as these aliens. But yeah, also in regard to the alien imagery, I particularly loved the scene, I think it was the one where he finally reveals himself to his lover, and you know, it's doing that kind of cross-cutting thing that Rogue likes to do, particularly in like love scenes and whatever, and I guess it's the aliens' way of making love to each other, but they start kind of like emitting this weird liquid off of their bodies, this kind of like milky thing. It's kind of like gross, and yet at the same time strangely beautiful. I don't know. And they're just kind of like twirling in the air. I guess that's how they get down on planet Zardoz. So I thought the music was cool. There's no Bowie songs in here, unless I missed something. It's kind of a mix of, you know, actual songs from the time or whatever, and then also this like particularly cool kind of moody background music, which I also really enjoyed. But there's, you know, it's not too much of it. It's not like it's a musical or something. It is pretty much like a serious drama. And I will say, hey, I'm not just saying this because the guy just died, but hey man, he knocks it out of the park with this performance. He really does. I'm glad he did too. Not just saying that, and again, it makes sense because he had, you know, background in acting and all that, but he really just plays it with the right amount of restraint and subtlety. And, you know, really all the performances in the movie are quite good, you know. No real complaints about anything like that. Nobody goes for, like, campy or anything like that. And again, even, like, the character of the love interest, although I didn't like her character, it wasn't like a bad performance either. That was just the character she was playing. And I particularly like the scene where when he actually reveals his true alien life form to her, she literally pisses herself. That was a pretty epic scene. Especially when the music comes in. It's just like, what? Ah! It was undoubtedly an entertaining movie. And but I just don't think it was maybe as prophetic as some people give it credit for. But then again, it's not the giant mess that some people also make it out to be. It's kind of a reoccurring trope on this channel, or it soon will be, but I guess maybe one of the things that I got out of it, particularly the scenes where he's watching like 10 TVs at once, maybe that's a comment on, you know, oversaturation of media, or just being overloaded with media and not actually really getting anything out of the images, you know what I'm saying? Which, that, hey, that has definitely gotten more relevant over time. Other than that, the other themes I think they were maybe going for were like, you know, the human race can corrupt anyone, or, you know, people are more alike and the same than you think they are. It seems kind of like standard sci-fi fare to me. It's a cool little art film. It's actually kind of aged well. It's a bit uneven. It's certainly not perfect, but, you know, definitely worth a look. I would say on the Bowie scale, I'd do a bump, maybe a bump and a half. You know what I'm saying? And needless to say, but once again, gotta give it up to Mr. Bowie. What a fucking cool dude. Just look up all of these interviews he's done and TV appearances, let alone the sprawling, completely all over the place catalog that he's done. Insanely influential in so many ways. And that's coming from someone who's like barely even tapped into his discography. I'm one of those plebs who's just like, yeah, Ziggy Stardust, great album. Which it is. Is it just me, folks? Or in that scene where they go to church and they see the preacher. By the way, it's funny to see like Bowie standing there struggling to sing. That was funny. But was that preacher the same guy from If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do? You know which movie I'm talking about. That goddamn Christian propaganda movie, anti-communist movie that Negativland would go on to sample in their famous track Christianity is Stupid. Now I know all those guys are interchangeable and like, but was that the guy? That voice and that face, that looked really familiar. I don't know, somebody Tell me. I'm no scientist, but I know all things begin and end in eternity. My friend from work, Mr. Tommy Darcy, shout out to you for buying me this movie, Trust, same director as Amateur. I will be, screening this soon. Probably gonna review it, I would imagine. Thanks again, man. Fucking cool. And hey, I buy DVDs and vinyl and whatever all the time, but just thought I'd show off a couple ones I got recently, all at once. Blazing Saddles. I mean, come on. Full Metal Jacket. Starting to beef up my Kubrick collection here. So far I have 2001 and this one. Come on, man. The Shining. Hey, I guess it's not a perfect movie and all that, but definitely one of the creepiest fucking movies ever made. I mean, just so moody, And finally, another Jack Nicholson. Forget it, baby! It's Chinatown! All the kind words about that video of me playing bass recently, which I also dedicated to Bowie. I really appreciate it, thank you. I'm going to keep putting out videos. I just want to say I'm also going to start doing some editorials and that kind of thing. And hopefully I'll get that spin-off thing with my girlfriend going soon. The rom-com thing. Love you, Bowie. Stay Starman? I don't know.